Good morning, it's the 11th of January 2025. You're welcome back. LA fires, Los Angeles fires. Well, folks, there are live streaming of the fires in California, and even this morning early, I was able to see video footage from helicopters high up in the sky, and you could see the one spraying the water underneath, showing the wildfires in California. Now, it'll take probably a couple of videos to deal with it. It is relevant. If it wasn't, I wouldn't be covering it. Los Angeles was originally settled by Spanish and Mexican, which are a breed of Spain as well, but there were Indians, Native Americans there before them, of course. And it's called the City of Our Lady of the Angels, or the City of Our Lady, Mother of the Angels. All around southwest California, you get this Christian, mostly Catholic naming of places. Santa Maria, Santa Barbara, Santa Monica, San Diego, so Santa Ana. So that's just the way it is, and that's the history of it. But nowadays, there's not much respect for any Christianity now. Now, about 10 people are dead, and to my notion, it'll end up at 15 people dead. May they rest in peace. It's one of the most affluent areas in the world. I understand James Woods has lost his home. Anthony Hopkins has lost his home. And I think Mel Gibson may have lost his home. But there are many ordinary people living there too. Now, we'll give a bit of a rundown. No matter how good a government you have in a place like that, it has to be understood that while I was never in California, friends of mine were, I was in South Dakota and Wyoming, and particularly around Yellowstone National Park in 1999, and Montana. And in Yellowstone National Park, the trees were all burnt. And it was 6 or 7 years before that, I'm not sure the exact date, when there were wildfires, probably started by lightning. In olden times, it was lightning started the fires, they believe. It could be an errant native, because the Native Americans had fire. They may have just lit a fire. But wildfires are part of the western United States for thousands of years, at least back to the Ice Age. And that explains why the plains area is so barren. Now, the land in part of New Mexico is bad too. Not much would grow on it, only brushwood. And indeed, Nevada is not great either. But California is somewhat better. But they're all prone to extreme long periods of no rain. That's just the fact. I saw a little clip of Jimmy Carter's funeral entourage in Washington and 6 inches of snow on the ground at the same time that these wildfires were taking place. The fire broke out last Tuesday evening. This is Saturday morning, the 11th of January. So, to say that white people or any people can move into an area where there have been wildfires for centuries and millennia and expect the weather to change to them is not very bright. And then it's going further now. They want to take my cows off me, make them wear nappies as well, and feed them certain types of food to try and stop them farting as a cure for their problem. They moved in there. The water resources of the area would keep at best 2 million people. There are at least 40 million people there and growing. And President Trump got it wrong. He said that the water was coming in from Canada and it was diverted over a schelp, I think it is, fish. The water's not coming in from Canada. It's largely snowmelt from the Colorado River. And that has its origins up in Colorado and some of the neighbouring states. He's not so far wrong, in fact, but he's a bit wrong. Okay, I've studied this long and hard years ago. So the water comes down and it goes through to is it the Hoover Dam? What's the other one? Is it the Coolidge Dam? Anyway, you can post another one. I just can't think of it. There's at least 2 dams and they create hydroelectricity. So now we look at what's been said. First of all, California is extreme woke. It's extreme left-wing. The people will vote left-wing and vote for the US Democratic Party until they can't stick living it anymore. And then they get out, and they should only be allowed to go to New Mexico because it votes woke as well. It votes Democrats. But sometimes they try and move to Texas, well-run states, or they move to maybe Kentucky or Georgia. And they tilt the balance, they bring their votes with them. And there should be a block on letting Californians move anywhere except to other woke states. They shouldn't be heavily taxed. Let them move to New York, a woke state. Let them move up to Oregon. I think it's a woke state as well. But they shouldn't be allowed to move in. If them rascals got moving into Montana, I think the population, well, I know the population of Wyoming is only 3 million. If you got 1 million of them into Wyoming, they'd swing the state against Trump. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that during the COVID scamdemic, it killed people, but the way it was handled was a scam. SCAM. Now YouTube print underneath any way you like. I could go 70 miles to the west this way in County Cavan, and I couldn't go 3 miles up the road to County Meath, and I couldn't go 1 mile down here less to County Monaghan. What a ridiculous restriction. And I saw a woman driving a car yesterday with a nappy on her mouth. They're still at it. So anyway, they sacked a whole heap of the firemen. I might print underneath the amount. It's there. I have so much facts about it in my head I can't remember it all. But they sacked a load of firemen. Good, honest, black, white and Filipinos and Latino firemen of all descriptions, and firewomen, because they wouldn't take the COVID vaccine. They wouldn't take something into their body. Pushed by Anthony Fauci, the health fella. And now Biden is talking about pardoning him. Well, if he is going to be pardoned, he must have done something wrong. So he is guilty of something, and now they're going to pardon him. So fire personnel are expected to take what he designs for them, and they let them go. The result is there is a huge shortage of firemen. Or firewomen, whatever you want. Okay. The next thing is the governor of the state is rip-roaring Gavin Newsome, and thankfully this came around. He'll never get to be vice president or presidential candidate. Now he's ruined. But he had his nose up to be in the position of Kamala Harris as vice presidential Democratic candidate in the last presidential election. Now she too was the candidate. She was a former governor of California. An airhead, LBGBQ, highly woke. She was beaten in the election. And she still got, sorry, I put on my cap just getting a bit chilly. She still got a lot of votes. So if you voted for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the last election, you are guilty of the gravest crimes against humanity. You're a criminal. If you voted from Connecticut, from New York, I don't care whether you're Irish or not. What you've done is a dirty, shameful act, and no proper Irish person who knew the history of his country would vote for those creeps. Even Kennedy jumped ship and went over to Trump's crowd, and Kennedys were decent people. They mightn't be perfect, but they were good people. This woke stuff has now got into them since Obosio came on the scene. Right? Now, so Newsome wouldn't allow the water down. The reservoirs are empty. The hydrants for the fire brigades are painted in the LBGPQ rainbow colours, and when you turn them on, there's no water. They're trying to deny there's no water. The reservoir over the Palisades area, Pacific Palisades area, where a lot of this fire is, there's several places outbroken dotted around northwest Los Angeles. They're all painted LBGPQ and no water in them. So that's what Gavin Newsome done. Trump has come out and called him for what he is. A rascal and a useless rascal. The fish that he wanted are not native to there, and there was enough to protect them without robbing the water from the fire hydrants. There was an expert on insurance on Joe Rogan podcast, and he pointed out about 6 months ago that this was going to happen. He says it only takes the winds to take a certain course and the conditions to be right, and you're going to have a disaster. Now, the area gets a nod sweeping of Santa Ana winds, known as the Devil's Winds to the Native Americans, and they're a bit like the east winds that come here in April. We often get east winds here in April, and they're extremely cold. They go through you, and they bring flu and all that from Europe, where there are diseases on the air. They're extremely cold, and they're the love child of the wind industry because they're very constant, but they only last about 3 to 4 weeks. So he's made the point this was waiting to happen. Anyone could know. But what the Democrats was doing and the leaders was doing, they were going on a wing and a prayer, going state by state. If this fire had to happen during the presidential elections, the Democrats might not have done so well there. So that's Newsome. He come out and he says, oh, it's misinformation. Oh, it's right-wing propaganda. Oh, Trump is using politics, bringing politics into it. Surely the management of your fire services is politics. They wouldn't cut down the timber. They wouldn't manage the woods. The sawmills are gone bust. There is a steam sawmill in a part of California, steam driven. They're still getting some trees. But they wouldn't allow management of the forest or any company to cut the odd tree here and there. And when a tree falls, instead of cutting it up and using it for timber and firewood, it has to be left there naturally. The result is there hasn't been rain for nearly a year, and that is a very, very dry area. It has always been dry, and the proof it's always been dry is that Nevada, which is just up the road, has been desert. For years and years and hundreds and thousands of years, it was never any other way. Now, part of California is desert as well, but some of it is green because it gets rain, a certain amount of rain. So its population is about 5 times what the water resources would allow for. It has a very mixed population. Mexicans, black people, Chinese. The Chinese came there in the 1840s and built the railroad across and met the Irish coming the other way. And there were 3 or 4 miles of an overlap before they got it like this. They had it this way, should be this way. So anyway, so all those are there, and it is a beautiful place. And house properties are very expensive in it, and a lot of houses are built with oak wood and pine wood. And so they're ready for fire. But there's some buildings are built with masonry, and they're gone up as well. Nothing could withstand this. So the next thing is the mayor, a woman of colour. She wasn't fed in our house, but she's not that stout now, but she's a woman of colour. She got the job, or they voted for her because of her colour and her wokeness on her left wing. Now, there is a point. She humped off to Ghana to a party for the president over there. Maybe she has Ghanaian blood in her. She humped off over there. Now, the question I can't tell you is, did she know the fires was at high risk? That's what's been said. Everyone knew these fires were highly risky, and she went off. But nobody actually says whether or not. She's Bass, is her name, Bassie or Bass. Nobody knows, was the fire already running when she went away? Anyway, she came back into the airport and she was questioned by reporters, and this is what she did. She stood dumb and mute for over 3 to 4 minutes and never answered a question because she couldn't answer. And this is because she's a dope head. I think she was on a conference since then with media there, and she gave a better show, but she was already filled full of information by her handlers. And this is the same thing with Kamala Harris. She couldn't answer a sentence. She has to be prompted. So if she had to win the presidency, who would be prompting her? Only the rascals that's causing all the wars. So people who condemn Trump and say he's a bully must realise at least he can think relatively clearly. He's coherent and he can think a situation out, and he can get on the phone to a foreign leader and speak sense. Whereas Kamala Harris would have to listen to what he says, hang up, get briefed by somebody or handlers and get back. That's the choice people had, and that's what the American voter knew. So this one has been promoting all the woke crowd, and none better than the fire chief. She's Crawley, I think. She's Crawley. She's Christine. She's Crawley anyway. And the government there, the what do you call him? The governor, Newsome, and all of them were critical of the fire department because it wasn't DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion enough. And so they appointed this one as the head buckcat of the fire service in Los Angeles. Massive city. It has a population bigger than 3 or 4 of the states, some of the lesser populated states. So anyway, it runs out to the Pacific Ocean, of course. So anyway, she was interviewed a while back, and she said that she admitted she got the job because she's DEI, diversity, etiquette, equity and inclusion, woke, cultural Marxist, LGBTQ and all this. And she was asked how many of these type of people, how many lesbians, gays and all this should be in the fire service. And she says there is never enough of them. There would never be enough. So imagine a good lump of a white lad or a good lump of a black man going in there. Number one, you're not a woman. Number two, you're not a woman of colour. Number three, you're not gay. Number four, you're not a lesbian. This one herself, Crawley, has a husband, and that's a biological female. So Crawley, I don't know whether she thinks she's a woman or a man or which she wants to be, but she's a lesbian. Her boyfriend, her husband is a woman as well. Both are biological women with biological bodies, breasts, and all that goes with being a woman. But they want to be men, some of them. I'm a bit confused with this. And some of them want to be women who are men. And apparently, the one she has a husband for has children. Maybe she had a man before. So don't ask me to unravel all this. The point is she's there because of this background, because of the rainbow flag. And she was present when the budget was cut by the mayor, that other one, Bass, that went to the Gaza funeral, Gaza inauguration of the president in Ghana. The Bass one, the mayor, cut the budget 17.6 million for firefighting. And this is typical of the left wing. And I get a lot of criticism for being conservative. The left wing doesn't care about people at all. The left wing spends now on what is instantly attractive to them. They never think of the evil day when the whole place might burn down, and they take a risk. And if they're faced with putting some money or some provisions aside for firefighting in Los Angeles, or bringing in millions of migrants and housing them, they'll choose the latter. And that's the same government you have in Ireland under Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, People Before Profit, and all the left parties, and Labour. That's what you already have here. But there seems to be a slight check on them here. That is easy for them to do it. And Keir Starmer in Britain is the ultimate king of woke. Okay? Now, I've tried to give you a bit of a background there. This is all factual. Now, what you should do, folks, is you can get YouTube on your television, and there are other channels as well, but they're all right for this stuff. It's when you can turn on this live, Los Angeles Fires live streaming. There's one crowd there doing it called Crux, C-R-U-X. I was looking at it there about 6 this morning, and you can actually see the thing burning underneath you, and it's burning all around that area of the Palisades. And it's also up in Eaton, which is a bit to the west. And there are a number of other spots there as well. And they're very hard to get out because there's timber. There's good seasoned dried timber on the floors. The trees have dead branches. There's no management. And this would have made very good fuel. And it would be biological fuel, wouldn't it? It would be biofuel in many ways for fires. So it's now spreading over to where that big Hollywood sign is. It's getting up there. I saw one film of it, and the flames are coming over the hill where the Hollywood sign is. And there are fears it'll get into the very city itself. It's unbelievable devastation. I do know and I do agree there are many decent people and kids who just wanted to live their lives and get on with life and want to be taxi drivers and normal jobs, and they are looking at the end of their house. That's rough. Even some of the film stars, well, there's people saying that your man James Woods laughed at the Palestinians being attacked and killed. He's very much a Trump supporter. He'd be on my side, but I don't get any joy out of seeing anyone having their homes bombed by anybody. But there's then Mel Gibson. I think his home is gone. Not a bad fella. Not a bad fella. And they're not all bad. Like, I mean, there is an entertainment industry there and they might as well be in it. And sure, in my day too, on a Friday evening, I'd sit back with a half of the whiskey and look at a good Clint Eastwood or John Wayne or something. Sure, a bit of escapism is no harm. I don't know why there isn't more films in England. I think the whole woke thing has destroyed filming because they can't show anything if it's not LBGPQ. You couldn't show a Wild West shootout now. You'd have to have one of the protagonists black. And you couldn't have the fella that's a baddie black. You'd have to have a goodie black. Because if you had a baddie black, he'd, with the black hat on him, they'd say you're a racist. So in England, you can't even show an advertisement on the telly. And it's coming to the stage in England where they'll affect mortgages and all that. Only white girls that marry black people and Asians will get mortgages and vice versa. So there's a huge move by the globalists to get inter-race, to get all the races mixed up. You only have to turn on your telly to see that. It has to be said, I'm not against some decent people from abroad. I was in Oman and backed into three Omanian Muslims, and I thought there'd be war. They couldn't have been nicer to me, the poor devils. They helped me every way they could. It's only minor. Still, they were nice. I knew in their heart they were not against me. They were nice people. So we have to be relevant. But these people are better off being nice in their own country rather than in mine. Anyway, that's a slightly different situation. Now, that's 22 minutes on this fire. This is what happens when you let the woke cultural Marxists run your country. This is what happens when you let them run anything. They run everything into the ground. They only see what's right in front of their noses. You can't tell them the consequences of anything. And I go back to me old bugbear renewable energy. Once it provides a bit of electricity, some windy evening, that's all it takes. The fact that it's burning tons of coal the rest of the time doesn't matter to keep them running. They don't think beyond that. It's government by the masses. It's a count of heads in democracy, irrespective of what's in those heads. And we see the country China being managed, and it is being managed. It's been managed big time. A lot of ordinary Chinese are becoming very, very wealthy. And one of the things about that communist system in China is that wokes can't get into the government. Now, I know they're down on religion and things like that, but wokes cannot get into the government. The Chinese Communist Party will not allow wokes in. They go over to Africa and they show them how to run their own countries. They give them the money and they work with them, kicking out the Europeans. As they say, the Africans say the Europeans give us lectures, the Chinese gives us roads and airports. And it's the same in Russia. Whether Putin is properly democratically elected, I'm not too sure, but he's some way elected. He is quite popular. But there's no way he would go into this nonsense. And I'm not against ordinaries being social and having good for people and the state looking after people. I'm for common sense. Common sense. Now, one of the big problems now in California, in Los Angeles, is that the insurance bills will now come in, and those insurance companies will try to get out of paying the insurance any way they can. The Newsome government capped insurance premiums. What was happening was insurance companies were entitled through actuaries to assess the risk of a property. But when they went to set off to lay off their policies to, what do you call those? Lloyd's of London is one. I just couldn't think of it. Underwriters. Lloyd's of London are underwriters. Now, I think there may be other underwriters, but Lloyd's are a big one. Now, if Lloyd's ask me to become a name, I can become a name. I can share their premium profits, but I'd have to lay my whole farm on the line. I'd have to agree that if they go bottom up on a particular insurance, the farm and all is sold. And I personally witnessed that. And I can name the people here because they're all gone from Ireland. And that was the late Lord Farnham and his good wife, all passed away in Cavan town. He had a big farm down there, ex-landlord place. He was a bit of an old gentleman, wasn't a bad fella. I knew them well. And the next thing was, everything was going all right. He was about 67 when he had to sell all around the place. There was an auction and he had to sell almost everything. He was allowed to keep the basic land, which I don't know what way the title of it was. It's now the Radisson Hotel. So what happened was, it was in the paper. He wouldn't tell people, but I knew what happened because it was in the Financial Times. The Piper Alpha oil rig went up in the North Sea and 92 people were killed. And the claims came in and he had to meet the claim. So that's what a name at Lloyd's is. Gavin Newsome would not allow the Californian insurance companies to increase their premiums because their underwriting costs went up. The underwriters assessed the risk of all these fires and said, we'll not cover you as underwriters. Now, an underwriter covers a certain amount of the cost of a claim for a fee. The insurance company has to bear some of it. But you'll find no matter who you get insurance, PMPA, AXA, FBD, that they're all underwritten by probably Lloyd's of London. Right, so at least 10% of your premium goes to Lloyd's of London. And someone like the late Lord Farnham gets that money. And there's no way out of it. So the government in California would not allow the insurance companies, I should be looking this side, I think, sorry if I'm looking at the wrong side, wouldn't allow the insurance companies to increase their premiums based on the fact that their underwriting costs had gone up. And this is a fact, I've checked this out. And so what happened was, anyone that was in a high-risk area lost their insurance altogether. And I saw a 62-year-old nurse on YouTube this morning being interviewed, genuine person, and her 90-year-old parents were in their early 90s, her mum and dad, I think she was an only daughter, were in a house that was being threatened by the flames, and she refused to be evacuated. She says, I'll stay here. And they were going around with buckets of water and everything trying to protect their property. She says, if that house burns, my parents have nowhere to go. They were refused insurance, having had insurance on it for 50 years. They were refused insurance. And they were refused insurance because the socialist Gavin Newsome American Democratic Party, and before that Kamala Harris government, brought in a law to say you can't increase insurance premiums based on underwriting increases. This is an effort to force the underwriters to cut down on their fees. But they can't cut down on their fees. They have to get by and make some bit of a profit. And this is what Kamala Harris said during the election. She said, we'll cap fees, we'll cap expenses. We'll not allow companies to charge more than a certain amount. But that doesn't take into account inflation. It doesn't take into account higher risk assessments. And this is the stupidity you got in California. The result is, I don't know, at the time of seeing that at 5 a.m. this morning, the 11th of January, our parents' house was still intact. I don't know if it still is. Have I brought this across to you? If you notice with me, my whole way of thinking is to try and combat the mediocre ignorance of the left. In the recent election in which I stood, the people of Cavan Monaghan voted for that. They would not change. And when you ask them why they didn't, they say, well, it's the EU runs the place anyway. So this is the kind of kicking the ball around you get, and kicking the can back and forward. So that's the situation. Now, that ignorance could signal the end of the whole American empire. If that spreads to other states. And if Trump is beaten by them and they're out to beat him every way they can, then America will be at an end. But then again, maybe otherwise it might be the other way. There is terrible suffering. May God help them and for have mercy on the souls of those who died. That's all I can say. But you cannot fix or legislate for an idiot. The fires are still burning, and I will probably do another video. That's enough now, if that's all right. No doubt someone will comment underneath, oh, Val's ranting again. This is the fact. You couldn't imagine not being able to get insurance after paying for years. They wouldn't cover him at any fee. And there are several like that. It's estimated that 1/3 of them, I'll get the figures better, have no insurance at all on their houses. That's because of all of this green woke stuff. If that was managed right, if the state had a good fire policy, a good wood management policy, you wouldn't have this. Comment underneath, tell me if I'm wrong. I'll try and post links to some of the videos, but you can get it up there now today. It'll be a couple of hours till I get this uploaded, and you'll be able to watch these fires. It's unbelievable, horrific. The flames, and what's happening is that the little bits of embers are burning on the trees, and they're being blown by the wind, and that wind is now dying down, but not completely, and the embers land way over there. So you could be here trying to stop that tree burning, and the embers are flying across over there, the far side of your house, and landing on the roof. One way would be get a chainsaw and knock the trees, if you could, coming up to your house. It might work. I'm not saying it would. Don't get me wrong. Now, another big problem was, and this is so typical, most of my viewers will understand. When the exodus was ordered, when the evacuation was ordered, most people got out, got their dogs and cats and anything they had. One woman had to decide what she'd bring, and she brought one or two things, and she left behind trinkets and rings of her mother and watches belonging to her grandfather, and there was military medals and all that, and lovely artwork and all of that. And when they went out on the road, there was streams of cars with maybe 300 cars long. Now, if there had to be a police officer on a motorbike, he could have went up to the top, and when they'd go to stop, tell them, you get on up there. That was me and the guards, and I often seen it. Oh, stop, I don't know what I'll do. And they have no regard for the hundreds of motorists behind and what they're doing. If you stop a car on a road, or stop 2 cars or a lorry, nobody can get past you. That means everyone behind you is stuck. Not only that, they got out and walked and brought the keys and brought the keys with them. Imagine the selfishness of those. Imagine them. A good policeman on a motorbike to keep up near the top and tell them, get to hell on. Move on. Oh, officer, I feel the smoke. Get on. Even if he made them pull in and send out a message, pull in along the sideway, the people could get by. They just pulled up and walked off. That is what happens. Did you ever notice if you're an hour in a traffic jam anywhere in the country, in Ireland or Britain, when you get up to where the traffic jam was, there is nothing? Did you ever notice that? I've often been walking in Dublin and walked to the end of the traffic jam, and I couldn't see what was wrong with these stupid motorists. It's a good study to do. It's a great exercise to do. It'd be a good study for school kids to do. How come there's no traffic jam at the top of it and there's a traffic jam at the bottom? That's a good question. This has resulted in billions of dollars of good cars being bulldozed out of the way to get the fire brigades in. Just think of that. So where were the police to make sure that didn't happen? There was no plan or common sense whatsoever. And when these things break out, the one thing you can be sure of is that the police and the fire services, unless they're specifically trained for something, will always do the wrong thing. This happened at the Hillsborough Stadium in England, I think it was 1990, during a soccer match. The people were crushed to death. All they had to do, the police officer in charge, was open one gate and let the people spill out on the pitch and relieve the pressure. He refused, and he was not jailed for that. And the Gardaí have often done the same here. Then I was in the Gardaí. You couldn't believe how stupid they will sometimes act. But where I was, and many of my men and people that were used to dealing with me did act correctly. Many of the time I made decisions on the spot which turned out to be very, very wise. And there are a lot of wise policemen in Ireland and in Britain, but they're getting fewer and far between. The whole idea now with the public service is they have to be female genitalia, they have to be black or Asian, they have to want to be men, they have to be lesbian, homosexual. Preferably they have to be married to a husband who's a woman who wants to be a man. Imagine the rainbow colours of the Pride movement. And I'm not against ordinary gay people. Please don't hate me over saying this to you. There was nothing stopping people being any way they like. But at the same time, you need the people appointed on merit. Who's the best one to plan out for fire? Who's the most competent to do it? Not who is LBGPQ, woke and all the rest. And that is how they appointed all these people. And the worst of all was sacking firemen for refusing to take poison into their systems. Now, YouTube, come on now and either beat me, cancel me out, ban me, or do whatever you want, or put your stuff underneath. This is the update on this tragedy. It's not over yet. And I have to say, there was a similar catastrophe in North Carolina, in the western part of North Carolina, where the hurricane came up and flattened people's homes. And Trump went out and he promised them help, and he probably will. And he did well there. He won that state. And but the thing is that there was a bit of consternation about North Carolina, but there seems to be more now because they're celebrities. Nobody should give celebrities any different treatment. The people of North Carolina who lost their homes and the flooding, and they can't get flooding insurance either, should be treated the same as any celebrity or anyone else, no matter who they are, Paris Hilton or anyone else. I once thought Paris Hilton was a French hotel, the Hilton hotels. But anyway, thank God there's none of them dead. I wouldn't like to see anyone hurt or burnt. But that's everyone. We should look at this the same. And if there's an earthquake in India or Pakistan or Nepal, we should be equally concerned about it. They're all human beings, in my opinion, and we should help all these countries, but helping should not extend to bringing them in here and treating them better than we ourselves. Is that a good broadcast, a good podcast for you on that, which is still playing out? And hopefully, if I get a good response, folks, I'll do another video on it then, on the updates and all of that. This is, remember, the people who lost their homes have nothing unless they have money in the bank, and some of them haven't. That's the first thing. The second thing is, those who have insurance will find it very hard to claim because the insurance companies could go broke. They are on the hook for a lot of this money. 3, the underwriters, which I'm not sure, and I will try and find out, and I'd love if anyone would post underneath. No doubt it'll be in the Financial Times, but definitely Lloyd's of London is one of the underwriters. They're always there. There could be 2 or 3 underwriters. The underwriters is going to be caught for this bill, running into billions and billions, possibly 2 trillion. God only knows. Where are they going to get the money? Only pull it out of all the rich and famous and people who have become names at Lloyd's of London. Pension funds and everything else. And they're going to get the bill, and that's going to suck that money out of the economy to pay for this. It will really help the construction industry in California, and there will be good opportunities for Irish workers there. But then if you go there, you might never come back. You might be better off staying at home, tell you the truth. But that's the thing. What is the financial impact of this? At a time, and don't forget, it's said that the Californian government gave more money to the fire services of Ukraine than it gave to the Californian fire services. That's another part of them. But now when this hits an America that's up to its ears in debt, I think it's $35.5 trillion in debt. Chinese and other bondholders are stopping lending to them, partly because they don't like their policies of sanctions, but also because there is a fear of not getting the money back. And someone did post underneath on one of my videos that that's a possibility with Trump about not paying back this money. I won't go there for now. I don't know. I haven't the research done. Okay. The bondholders are getting jittery about lending to Britain, where you have woke Starmer. And they're getting jittery about lending to Macron's France. Where is the money going to come out of? Where is all this money going to come out of? You can print a certain amount, and they'll probably print it all. And if they do that, they'll ruin our economies. Look at inflation prices. A bottle of Highland Park whiskey, this time, well, about Christmas, 12 months, maybe 14 months, was €32 in the north, in some of the supermarkets in the north. And I priced it the other day, just in one of those off licenses along the road. I didn't buy it. 45, 32 to 45 in 13 months, maybe 14 months. So this appears to be what's going to happen. Our money is going to become worthless. And when the dollar will become worthless, the people who lend to America will not get the value of, they'll get the dollars back, but it'll be worth nothing, or worth virtually nothing. Anyway, I hope I've given you a good account of this. This could have serious repercussions when all this money is drained out. Some of the wealthiest parts of America, the average house value is $4 million to $6 million. Some of the houses are $8 million. Now, the area does not include Montecito, which is north of Los Angeles, and that's where the Megans live, Prince Harry and Meghan. So, just to let you know that. But you can go into Google Maps, and look at it and get a good grip of the places. Now, I saw a video from the high up in the air this morning showing the Hollywood Boulevard. And that's a road that runs across the back of Los Angeles, between Los Angeles City and Hollywood, which is a big mountain with the big sign on it. You know that sign. And an awful lot of the studios are there, like Universal Studios, and all of these studios are there. And that's where the early black talking movies were made, Laurel and Hardy and all of those. But I saw it, and you could see the boulevard, a big road. You could see the area behind it clean, no fires, and you could see Hollywood up at the top of the hill. And across the top of the mountain, just like the Loch and Lea mountain here in East Cavan, you could see the flames coming over, coming very near the Hollywood sign. Now, I presume something will be done to try and keep that iconic sign. If it gets blackened, it'll not look good. But that's how close it's getting. I hope the wind dies down. Lord, what they wouldn't give for a little bit of the rain here. The frost here has turned to rain. We were promised frost all over the weekend. It's gone. It's raining now. What they wouldn't give for a little hour of our rain now. I spoke to a man one time who was an American, but very, very, very well educated, and he'd done research, and he claimed that Ohio and America was the second best place to live in the world, and that Ireland was the next. And he took into account the absence of war, the climate being relatively moderate in both, but Ohio had the possibility of war and conscription, and it had Yellowstone National Park, which had a very remote chance of blowing up. There's a caldera there, or a volcano, or whatever you like to call it, and Ireland doesn't. So he took everything into account, and he said when you take everything into account, Ireland is the premium place to live. I'm only telling you what the man said. Just think about it though, and fish it around your head. Look at Finland had to join NATO. Look at Sweden had to join NATO, bringing it under the Americans. The Americans can go in there and commit crimes, and nothing can be done with them in that country. And so really and truly, I think we didn't appreciate how good a country we have in Ireland. Even though I'm getting cold here now and it's a bit miserable at the moment in Ireland, we're still possibly better off, or if only we had a government that would run it right. We're hardly ever going to get that now. Folks, that's 44 minutes, one of my longest videos ever on this, and I might come back to it a bit. I hope you enjoy it. I hope I've given you a good grasp of what's taking place as best I can. And this is all in my head. I have no reference here at all. I'm just using my head. Very great figures can be posted underneath, and post underneath or tell me I'm wrong if you want to. Now, before I go, I was challenged on a few things there that I have to proof and fact check and get back to, and I will do that in due course. Let's say goodbye for now, and let's say a wee prayer for the people of California. Now, there are those who are saying, and I'm going to caution here, I'm not going to say it, this is the wrath of God. Now, there is a passage in the Bible. I might post it here. Now, I'll just give you the areas. Palisades, there's a fire. Eaton, there's a fire. That's to the east of it. If I said west of Los Angeles, that's to the east. Hurst fire, Lydia, Lidea fire, and Sunset fire. That's where some of the fires are. Now, I'll just leave me a second. Now, one little thing I didn't include, I might as well include it here. Some of these fires are started deliberately. They're started deliberately. And the police arrested a man there was a report of a man going around with a blowtorch. I showed one on my video the other day, a thing that you just push and it blows out flame. A little handheld blowtorch that works downwards for the job. And he must have been looking at it, for he was going around setting fires. There's people in California doing this maliciously. And of course, the more migrants you have and the more disgruntled people you have, the more of these you'll have. He was arrested, he was taken in, he admitted doing it, and he was released. That's the law and order you have. Now, how can you work with that? How can you handle this? Now, one of the things I won't tell you is P. Diddy's home gone. You know P. Diddy, that Sean fella. I don't know, but I see chat on some of social media that his house is up in flames and there may be evidence in there. I don't know if it is got up in flames, and if some of the charges against him are that he committed these crimes in his own house, well then that house is gone, so no judge will ever be able to come out there. Now, don't hold me on that, I'm only filling you in. There's also a report on social media that the water supply in this area is owned by a millionaire's private company. Some fella managed to buy up the water supply, okay? And the last piece here is on the biblical end of it. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah. They were the homosexuals. And I'm not against homosexuals. I'm against this extreme radical homosexuality. From the Lord out of the heavens, he sent down burning sulfur. Heavens. Thus, he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. That's Genesis 19, 23-25. Genesis 19, 23, 25. I'm not claiming that's the thing, that's what's happening here, that's the wrath of God. But I am saying, and just before I do this, my last word, I am saying that whether or not you will beat God or not, you will not beat nature. You will not beat nature. Nature should have been watched, been sympathetically obeyed, do whatever intervention to the land is necessary to keep people safe and doing all right. But what these creeps are trying to do is change nature, change the weather in 100 years' time. That's the goal of the Green parties all over the world. To give us a different day in 100 years from now. I look out the window here and I see wet and rain and 4 degrees or 5 degrees centigrade temperatures. I see the wind turbines producing nothing. And they're claiming that if we vote for them and pay enough taxes and get rid of our cattle, that in 100 years, that's the 11th of January 11th of January 2125, the weather will be different. It'll be, what will it be? Will it be freezing? Will there be rain? Will it be dry? What do they want the weather to be that time? Can they promise us nice climate? No, they can't. What are they promising us? It will be whatever nature decides, not whatever our Green Party, Eamon Ryan or Roderick O'Gorman or any of these creeps decide. This is all human frailty and ignorance. That's the story, folks. That's a long video, and we'll see you back for something else. Comment underneath on this unbelievable situation. Bye.